My name is Evelyn. I'm 32, and right now I'm writing this from the small apartment I rent above a shuttered antique shop in Ashford, Massachusetts. The curtains are heavy, salt is piled in the corners, and the air hangs thick with the same herbal smoke that has followed me since that first mistake. Once, a long time ago, I was ordinary. I shelved books for a living. The stacks were my refuge, the hush of pages, the steady rhythm of returning patrons. Solitude had always been comfortable for me. Perhaps everything started there. Among the aisles and the whisper of paper, a donation arrived at the library's special collections department. A battered 19th century binding, leather cracked and soft with age. Inside were handwritten folios, odd diagrams, astrological tables, recipes for displets, and incantations stitched in a hurried, looping hand. Academic curiosity drew me in. At first I told myself it was history, folk magic as a cultural artifact, rituals as social practice. My research was meticulous, notes, cross-references, nights spent in online archives and obscure forums. I read about protective amulets, homemade charms, seasonal rites. I collected notes the way some people collect stamps. At home, I set up a little work table, a few tumbled stones, a jar of dried herbs, a handful of candles. It felt quaint. Eventually, I copied a protection circle out of a manuscript and drew it on paper one evening, more as an experiment than anything else. The light on the desk trembled. For a second, the air changed, cooler, quieter, as if the whole apartment inhaled. I told myself it was nothing. Still, curiosity deepened into obsession. What started as an antiquarian hobby became something else. I began to perform small experiments, sachets for better sleep, tea blends to invite good fortune, a smear of scented oil under my pillow to coax pleasant dreams. I told myself this was placebo, but belief is a slow theft. The rituals found their way under my skin. The library's ordered world slipped, page by page, into a darker room. The nights shifted first, a tremor down the spine, the feeling of something moving just out of sight. Then it grew. Sleep turned into a battleground. When I closed my eyes, the air in the bedroom thickened. It settled like lead on my chest. I learned later the clinical term, sleep paralysis, but the experience itself is beyond any clinical phrasing. I would be awake and immobile, unable to call out, as if someone heavy pressed on my sternum. A chorus of whispers would surround my head, a language I could not place. I could feel breath that wasn't mine on my neck. I tried to scream. The voice lodged in my throat. Sometimes the episodes lasted minutes, sometimes an eternity, until the grip broke and I bolted upright, gasping. The lamp's halo exposing only the empty room and my own pounding heart. When morning came, I found bruises, hand-like marks on my arms, thin scratches across my back. The world paled. Fatigue became constant and sharp. I made mistakes at work. My hands trembled when I reshelved books. Panic became a companion. I sought help. Doctors, sleep studies, blood tests, everything normal. Stress, anxiety, they said, and prescribed pills that only blurred the edges of my nightmares into stranger, more vivid forms. Desperate, I began to read more, the darker corners of forums where other sufferers met. A name kept surfacing, Marcus Kane. Folks called him a remedy man, a seer, someone who handles possession. Comments varied between relief and caution. He saved my cousin, beware. He's powerful. I wanted relief more than caution. Kane's shop sat on a narrow side street where storefronts sagged and neon signs flickered. The glass bore hand-painted symbols and dried herbs hung in the window. Inside smelled of smoked sage and something metallic and old. He, Marcus Kane, waited behind a desk beneath an oil lamp. He looked ageless in a way that set my teeth on edge. Hair shot with silver, skin creased like old maps. But his eyes were startlingly young and black as a crow's. He watched me speak without interrupting. "You're late, Evelyn." "I expected you," he said, voice low and oddly warm. He listened to my nights, nodding, scribbling in a small black book whose pages were crowded with strange marks. Finally, he spoke. "This is not small. You are bound to something old." He reached for a velvet pouch and slid it across the counter. Deep red, tied tight with braided thread. "Keep this on your person. Do not open it, ever. If you open it, the protection fails, and whatever clings to you will return tenfold." His tone was absolute. The price was steep, and my last reserves felt lighter for how quickly I surrendered them at first. The pouch seemed to help. The heaviness lifted. My nights grew quiet. For the first time in months, I slept straight through, waking with the easy lightness I'd forgotten. I thanked him and left with an almost religious gratitude. Kane told me small things to do. Anoint the pouch with a drop of oil on Fridays. Burn a particular blend before bed. Avoid certain streets at sundown. He handed me incense and a tiny phial of dark oil. The oil smelled sweet at first. Later, it would make my head swim. The relief was intoxicating. Soon, the instructions multiplied. "Do this on Tuesday and Thursday," he'd say. "Do not eat meat on those nights. Do not visit the river path." Each rule knitted me tighter into his authority. Then the warnings capriciously turned to threats. "Follow my words. If you defy them, the protection fails." The first time I defied him, a petty lapse. The weight returned heavier than before. When I awoke, my neck bore 2 small angry marks as if bitten. The charm's power had a price, and with every payment of money and obedience, I paid more than I knew. As my visits to Marcus Kane increased, so did the peculiarities. Odd hours to perform rituals, foods to avoid, people to cut out of my life. His voice threaded through my days. He insisted I report daily to confirm my compliance. My small acts of autonomy dissolved under the weight of gratitude and fear. Then, one afternoon, he handed me something inside the same red pouch, a tiny lacquered box, cold and stamped with unfamiliar glyphs. "Do not open," he insisted again, tapping the lid with a fingernail. "Keep it closed. Trust me." Days later, driven by a restless hunger to know, I undid the knot. The box contained 2 things. A scrap of my own hair, unmistakable, a dark curl, and a folded sheet of paper inked in a hand that made my skin crawl. The heading read, "Agreement of Obedience." My name, my birthday, words that claimed my will and body under the witness of a named spirit. The paper was sealed with a dark waxen stamp. On the margins, a name was written, the same sequence I'd heard whispering in my ear. I burned the hair and the paper with shaking hands. The smoke stung my eyes, but that night the house dreamt of fury. The voice inside me screamed, "You burned the pact. You owe." I woke with 2 raw red punctures on the side of my neck. I fled. I packed a duffel and left town on the late bus with only the clothes I could stuff into my bag. The city lights blurred as the bus swallowed the highway, but the feeling followed. On the bus I felt watched. I heard a roar like 1,000 whispers when I closed my eyes. At a cheap motel, I pulled the curtains tight and slept with a chair jammed under the doorknob and a kitchen knife beneath the pillow. The marks on my neck throbbed as if fueled by someone's breath. The panic grew until it was an ache so familiar it barely slowed me. A week later, with nowhere sure to go, I called home. My mother listened, shook her head softly, and after a long pause told me a name. "Henry Doyle. He's odd," she said, "but he knows old stories. He helped someone in our family long ago. He keeps books. If anyone can help, he can." Hope is a thin thread, but it held. She gave me an address in a neighborhood of narrow row houses where a faded sign read Doyle Books and Oddities. Henry. Doyle's shop was less theatrical than Kane's. Shelves sagged with folios about folk remedies, local superstition, and early American hymn. Henry's small grey must, spectacles perched low, brewed tea, and offered no grand promises. When I told him everything, his face folded not with pity, but with the cool appraisal of someone who understands the mechanics of harm. "You burned the paper?" he asked. I nodded. He sighed, and his hand hovered over a shelf of battered philosophy texts. "You've been tricked into an exchange," he said. "They used your fear and a promise of protection to bind you. Burning the contract broke the formal tie, yes, but the energetic line, its echo stays. They'll rally against you because you broke a bargain. They don't like that." His remedy was not a powerful charm, but a regimen. Salt baths morning and night. Sage smoke traced around the threshold. Repetitive declarations of intent, simple. Embodied acts meant to rebuild personal boundaries. "Protection starts as ritual and finishes as habit," he said. "Repeat the work. Keep your voice. Don't talk about it to the wrong people. Don't let fear become the instrument." He also taught me to say a sentence aloud, every morning, an anchor. "I am not yours. I am my own." Progress was not instant. The first nights after Henry's regimen were worse. The presence that once sat on my chest became a chorus, screaming my name. "Traitor, traitor." But the ritualized acts, the salt in the bath, the doorways swept with smoke, the morning sentence gave me a way to push back. I learned to breathe into the fear, speak into it, reduce it from a giant to a shadow. Most importantly, I stopped obeying without question. Refusing one small demand felt like reclaiming a sliver of myself. I still visited Henry once a month. He offered books instead of spells, philosophy on agency, simple meditations, an old anthology of New England apothecary practices. He never dressed as a savior. Instead, he taught tools of endurance and language to name what haunted me. "Names hold things in place," he told me. "Don't let them keep your name. Change a route, Learn new phrases. Bring your day's small acts that are only yours. I did not win. The marks on my skin healed slowly. Paranoia remained a faithful shadow. I moved to a new apartment in a different town, refused dinners at odd hours, avoided red objects that made my chest clench. Sleep still came laced with noise sometimes, but the weight lessened. When the pressing came now, I had rituals, salt, sage, sang aloud, I am my own, that pushed it toward the periphery. I stopped calling Marcus Kane. A few times I caught myself imagining his face in crowds, searching out for his shadow in strangers. Old terror flinched, but I forced my feet forward. Months later, in a moment of brittle courage and rage, I returned to the place where it had begun, the library. I catalogued the donation that had started the spiral, made a careful accession note, and reshelved the folios under a restricted call number. I wrote a report to special collections and flagged the item. Fragile, potentially dangerous, to be handled only with gloves and institutional oversight. I did not want anyone else to touch that red thread. I'm not healed. There is no tidy ending. The world still tastes of ash sometimes. I still lock the windows and keep the curtains closed. I keep a small jar of salt by my bed and a slip of paper with the sentence in my wallet. But I have something Marcus Kane could not sell me, a reserve of choice. I can decide. I can say no. If there is a last lesson in the story, it is this. Curiosity can open doors, but it does not excuse surrender. The red pouch that promises safety can be a trap. If you come across an object you're told never to open, do not open it. The consequence may be more than fear. It may ask for the thing you did not know you could lose. Your will. My name is Evelyn. This is not a victory tale. It is a record of endurance and a map of small defenses. Salt, smoke, steady speech, and the slow rebuilding of a life that once felt ordinary and safe. I live cautiously now, but I live. And if you listen to nothing else I say, do not let someone else keep the key to your nights.